want to talk about love, and specifically about the concept of God loving us. You hear this term, God loves you, from a lot of Christians. It's used to proselytize. It's used to help a person. I don't know. I'm not an evangelist, but it's presented as if it's something profound and meaningful. It's presented like something that if you really internalized, if you could really internalize how much God loves you, you'd feel really good about it. Now, far be it from me to deny anyone's feelings. If they feel like God loves them and they feel good about that, great. I'm really glad you feel good. I want to talk about, though, for me, why that concept really doesn't cut it. Why God's love, is not enticing to me, and why the idea of love as some cosmic or divine force just honestly kind of cheapens it. What is love? It's an emotion. What's an emotion? Well, I see emotions as animal experiences, brain experiences, products of having a nervous system. Animals evolved emotions because, well, they're really, really useful. Fear protects us, keeps us from harm. Love strengthens bonds, coheres communities. Love gets humans and any other species who experiences it to form these strong bonds and communities with each other. It motivates us to do amazing things for each other. It's extremely motivating to do things for each other, to protect each other. And, it feels really good. But what use would emotions be to a deity, at least an omnipotent deity? What use are emotions to the Christian God, I guess? If he experiences emotions, he certainly isn't forced to. And that alone is enough to make me not interested in God's love, because if God is omnipotent and isn't forced to experience emotions the way I'm forced to experience emotions, it's just not interesting to me. It's not the same. I'm interested in love from people I can relate to, who are experiencing a similar emotion to me. I like loving and being loved by an equal, by a person who I know is experiencing love in a similar way to me. A God for whom I would imagine love and other emotions are completely optional. It's just not the same. It's not that interesting to me. Emotions, as I understand them, are a product of being a physical brain in a temporary body, temporary universe. The physical, material world has limitations. I have limitations. I'm only going to live for a certain amount of time. I'm finite. That lack, that potentially, that possibility of dying, Like, those are the things that lead us to have emotions, to need emotions, to survive a little bit longer, to be a little happier. Um, that was sort of a tautology or something that just now. We have emotions to experience emotions. Scratch that. But we have emotions to, to survive and thrive, basically. And it's a direct product of being physical and limited and fragile. God, the concept of God that I was raised with and many people around me in my culture believe in, is this omnipotent God who has probably always existed somehow, who is everywhere, who knows everything, and can do anything. An entity like that, even if one were actually possible, by definition has no needs, has no limitations. It would not need emotions. And therefore, I just can't relate to it. What does love from a God mean to me? I mean, aside from a warm, fuzzy feeling, that's nice, but I can get those warm, fuzzy feelings from humans. And I prefer that because humans, I can interact with them and talk with them and touch them, and, their love from a human means something. Another reason why love from a human means so much more than love from an infinite God is, if someone loves me, they essentially have chosen me out of many possible people they could interact with, have relationships, love, whatever. What I mean is, our brains are physically limited by being physical to only be able to have a certain number of meaningful relationships, to only be able to pay attention to so many people at a time, to only really be able to have meaningful, what you would call love, for so many people. If somebody spends energy or time or emotion on me, that shows me that I'm special to them in some way. But if God loves every single person, by definition, nobody is special. It's like, if God loves everyone, then God might as well love no one, because it just makes no more distinction. There's no distinction between, there's no real distinction. I know where I was going with that sentence. I'm interested in relationships with equals, where there's give and take, where neither of us is perfect and we both or all will make mistakes, where we struggle together, where we share our human experience together and commiserate. That just appeals to me more. The idea of some, loving feeling coming down from some beneficent entity that I can't relate to at all, it just rings hollow. I want to say, if God loves me, he can express it in a way that I understand. If you can't express your love for someone in a way that they actually get it, internalize it and feel it, it's meaningless. So if God loves me, he could express it in a way that I understand. That, to where people wouldn't have to tell me he loves me on his behalf. I would say, okay, if God loves me so much, can he please tell me directly? I mean, if God exists, he knows me, and he would know exactly what it would take for me to really internalize and believe that he loves me. But it doesn't happen. Now we're getting into, I just, you can hear it coming, free will, which is really silly. I can love my friends and tell them I love them and show them I love them, and they are still free to reciprocate or not. They're free to express their gratitude how they want. Their free will isn't violated. If God really loved me, he could alleviate my suffering entirely. Like, that'd be a good start. And at some point, when you witness all the suffering in the world, trying to claim that God loves each and every single individual equally, even though there's rampant inequality and apparently no real justice intrinsic to the world, it's really rich. It's really narrow-minded. I think it turns love into this, I don't know, kind of this tawdry platitude where, like, it's meant to make you feel good a little bit, but only if you don't think about it too much. I think if one lets go of the fantasy of divine love, I think they can open themselves up much more to the joy of human love, of love between equals, love between friends. And not just erotic love, not just all kinds of love. Kind of love that motivates you to put effort or time into your community. Kind of love that motivates you to feed people who have no food or something. Like, the love that you can give and receive from humans, and non-humans for that matter, animals, is, to me, far more enriching and far more actually existent than this lofty promise of a God's love. A God that, I'll remind you, is not forced to experience love, knows no hardship, can't relate to me on any level, has no real limitations, wouldn't be particularly sad if I were lost or annihilated, doesn't cost him anything to express that love. Like, that's just not love. That's not love. Honestly, if we're talking about love between a temporary, fragile, fallible human and an infinite God with all the power and no accountability, I mean, that's not love. That sounds more like a hostage situation. Being told you're loved, but seeing direct evidence that that love is not there, if not for you, for others. Well, there is a word for that. It's a little overused, but it's getting gaslit. It's having a real experience of the world and then having someone else tell you, essentially, your experience is wrong. That, whether intentional or not, is gaslighting. And I would assume that most people saying God loves you are extremely well-intentioned. They really believe they've got something that, like, others want or should want. But they're a little too wrapped up in their own idea to meet people where they're at. to, to recognize how empty their promises sound. I'm not sure how much all this is making sense, but it's been on my mind because I recently wrote about this topic at length. It was, in this context, it was responding to a particular person, but it's pretty universal too. I'm not the only kid who was told that God loved her and, realized that that was a crock by a long shot. It's almost, it almost doesn't mean anything. It's so often repeated. It's like, sometimes, like when a word or phrase or idea gets repeated enough, it stops meaning anything. I feel like God loves you is sort of a thing that's like stopped meaning anything. And it can be hard to, stop and think like, wait, what does that actually mean? What does that actually translate into? I guess the upshot is, if I were doling out advice, I would say, regardless of if you believe in God or not, I would just say, focus on love with the people in your life, human relationships between equals. Recognize that love you can have between people, whether it's platonic, erotic, any other kind, is beautiful. And if you insist upon it, divine even. It feels divine, certainly, at points. And if a God exists, I could picture him, her, or it, or them, somehow having an interest in my health and safety. I can get that. And I can get the idea of whoever it is being able to bathe me in good feeling rays or whatever. But I think what's much more important to all of us, regardless of our religious belief, is, loving relationships between people, not just families, but communities. If you believe God loves you, to that degree, show that love to other people. Love others with the same degree that you think God loves you. Speaking of love, you are worthy of love and care, whoever you are. Everyone is deserving of love and care. Intrinsically, just for existing. We may not always get the love and care we need, but it's important for us all to remember that we are deserving of it.